Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the evolution of enterprise network security. We're going to unpack those modern trade-offs. The constant battle between having total physical control over your systems versus the ultimate flexibility of the cloud. It's really been an incredible journey from the days of hardware-based perimeters right up to today's identity-based security. And we're going to break it all down together. So, has network security actually improved or just evolved? There's this massive assumption in the tech world right now that just lifting and shifting infrastructure to the cloud automatically makes us safer. But is that actually true? Well, we're going to challenge that assumption right out of the gate. This question is basically the core mystery of our explainer today. Looking at the evolution of enterprise infrastructure, we've basically shifted across three main eras. We started way back in the past with strict on-premises setups. Then we moved into this awkward transitional phase, hybrid environments, trying to balance the two. And today, here we are in the current era of fully cloud-based environments. Now, to truly understand where we're at, we really need to remember exactly where we came from. Section 1, the old corporate network. Let's rewind a bit to the on-premises setup. For a lot of us, just thinking about this era brings back some serious nostalgic frustration, right? Accessing company resources back then was relatively straightforward, but man, was it rigid. Think about the realities. You absolutely had to fire up a VPN just to access internal systems remotely. Email security? That relied heavily on clunky proxy servers acting as these strict middlemen checking every single message. If you wanted a file, you were digging through mapped network drives. And honestly, my personal favorite, if you needed a simple password reset, you often had to be physically sitting inside the building, connected to the corporate network. Basically, it meant zero remote flexibility and frequent, super annoying connection issues. But hey, it wasn't just rigid for the users. This was an absolute physical nightmare for IT. Hardware failures meant you were literally sitting on your hands waiting for a physical replacement part to show up in the mail. System issues? They required manual intervention. Someone from IT actually had to walk over and fix a physical box. And heaven forbid there was a lack of documentation, because a single failure could just halt business operations entirely. Your whole company's productivity was completely tied to physical machines humming away in a specific room. All right, section 2. Welcome to the cloud and our modern environments. So looking at on-premises setups versus modern cloud and hybrid environments, we basically traded the hardware-dependent, manual, physically bounded setups of the past for the modern cloud. Now, organizations rely on incredible scalability and high availability. We get way faster incident response, and crucially, we've practically eliminated our dependency on physical infrastructure. The cloud essentially solved those major physical pain points by taking our systems virtual and making them infinitely expandable. Moving on to section 3. Identity is the new perimeter, which brings us to the new challenge. Here's the thing. Because the physical castle walls of the old corporate network totally disappeared, our entire focus had to shift to identity. Identity, as the perimeter, is our new security reality. We aren't just guarding physical servers anymore. We are relying entirely on identity and access security to protect our systems. Your digital identity, that's now the front door, the lock, and the key, all rolled into one. Which naturally leads us to ask, is stronger authentication alone actually enough? Because look, even with multi-factor authentication, getting those 6-digit text codes sent to your phone, widely enforced across almost all cloud platforms, we still have a massive problem on our hands. The bad guys didn't just pack up and go home when we moved to the cloud. Nope. Instead, how attackers are evolving is right alongside us. They aren't trying to break down a firewall anymore, they're just stealing the keys. They're using super sophisticated phishing and social engineering attacks to trick users into just handing over their credentials. They're pulling off session hijacking and token theft. Basically, if they steal the digital cookie that keeps you logged in, they bypass the login screen entirely. No password needed. They realize pretty quickly that if identity is the new perimeter, they just need to hijack the identity itself. Okay, section 4, the cost of complexity and how we're layering solutions. So, to try and recreate that cozy, secure old perimeter, organizations are desperately stacking solutions. Look at how we're layering these modern tools. First, they integrate third-party identity providers to manage everyone's access in one single place. Then, they apply conditional access or context-aware access to actively check where you're logging in from and what device you're on. Sometimes, they even slap a VPN right back on top of their cloud identity just to be extra safe. And finally, they implement controls like egress IP restrictions to strictly limit where company data is even allowed to travel. We are quite literally building a massive digital maze. But as you can guess, there's a massive trade-off here. While each of these layers genuinely improves security on its own, the drawbacks of security layering are very real. We're looking at drastically increased costs to pay for all these different tools. We're dealing with much higher overall complexity. And probably the most dangerous part, we're creating way more dependencies between systems. Every single layer you add is just another layer that has to communicate perfectly with the rest of the stack. And that brings us to the hidden danger, creating a single point of failure. Look, by integrating multiple identity systems into a single login flow, we definitely improve the user experience, right? You log in once, and boom, you have seamless access to everything you need for the day. But we've essentially created a fragile, highly expensive single point of failure. It works beautifully until it doesn't. When it breaks spectacularly, if even just one minor component in that chain fails. We've all felt that universal dread of a broken login. When that centralized login flow breaks, access to literally everything might be entirely disrupted. To get the business running again, IT might be forced to, in a total panic, dangerously relax security policies. And your non-technical users? They are left completely struggling, unable to do their jobs because the very system meant to protect them has just locked them out. And there's a financial and strategic hit here too. The hidden cost of misalignment is huge. It creates an environment that's not only expensive, but ironically, way harder to secure. You have organizations purchasing overlapping or completely unnecessary subscriptions and maintaining legacy systems that play by completely different rules. When tools aren't perfectly aligned with your actual business needs, you end up with special security exceptions everywhere. And those exceptions, they poke holes right through that million-dollar digital perimeter you just spent months trying to build. Section 5. Did security actually improve? Let's evaluate where we stand. I want you to really weigh this in your mind right now. Was on-premises actually more secure just because it was simple and contained, giving us total physical control? Or is today's cloud-first model fundamentally better because of its incredible resilience? This perfectly outlines the core trade-off. With the on-premises security model, your key advantage was absolute control, but your key drawback was severely limited flexibility. Now flip that. With the modern cloud-first model, your key advantage is massive flexibility, but your key drawback? Increased dependency and massive complexity. We basically traded managing physical servers for trusting third-party providers, while simultaneously having to invest heavily in securing digital access across a totally decentralized network. So what actually matters today? Ultimately, security is way less about where your systems physically live. I mean, we aren't guarding server rooms anymore. What actually matters is how well your identity access is designed. It's about strict alignment with your business needs, so you aren't just drowning in overlapping tools. And honestly, perhaps most importantly, it relies on user awareness and practices. Because at the end of the day, a multi-million-dollar security stack is literally only as secure as the person holding the digital keys. Which leaves us with this final thought. Take everything we've explored in this explainer, the huge shift from physical walls to digital identities, the massive flexibility we've gained, and the overwhelming complexity we've introduced. What do you think? Has modern cloud security truly improved things or just made them more complex? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning how you secure your world.